Neighbors noticed that Linda Pedroza was changing. She was once the sweet girl next door, but she was turning into a rebel. This surprised her neighbors because she seemed to be the perfect kid. She was sweet, she helped her mother, she cooked, she cleaned, she took care of their pets, and she kept their yard immaculate. So what was happening? Was it just typical teenage girl behavior, or was there something else? Linda's mother, Isabel, was very strict and she worked long hours, and her father was an abusive alcoholic and he was in jail. Because of that, she started to have too much time on her hands, and it makes me think of the saying that my mother and grandmother used to tell me, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. Isabel worried about Linda because she had started to use drugs, she had run away, and she'd have boys over when her parents weren't there. Isabel was self-employed, and she was so worried about Linda's behavior that she took her out of public school and enrolled her into private school. She even tried to homeschool her, and sometimes she would even take Linda to work with her. For the 2 years before Isabel's death, they didn't see her smile anymore. Linda and Isabel, they used to argue a lot, and police were often called to the home. And also, around this time, Linda met her boyfriend, Antoine Wright, and this is when things really started to go downhill. He had just been released from prison in early 2000 after a 2-year sentence for shooting a woman in the stomach. One time, Isabel found them in the bed together, and according to Linda, she started making racist comments about Antoine. After they were caught in bed, Linda said she wanted to move out, but her mother said that she would call the police on Antoine because Linda was only 17 and still a minor. Antoine told Linda that they wouldn't last if they had to wait until she was 18, so the two of them began to think up ways to get rid of Isabel. This happened in June. She was turning 18 the following January, so he really didn't have to wait a long time for her to turn 18. When they were thinking up how to get rid of Isabel, they had planned to shoot her, but they bought the wrong bullets for a gun that someone had loaned Antoine, and because they purchased the wrong bullets, they had to come up with another plan. So on June the 23rd in 2000, when Isabel came home from work, Antoine hit her in the head with a frying pan so hard that the handle broke off. They then dragged her into the bathtub, and then they went to Home Depot. And there they bought 4 gallons of hydrochloric acid, and when they returned, they poured it over Isabel's body. They thought that her skin would dissolve away, and that they would only have to worry about getting rid of her bones. They got the idea to use acid because of a story that Linda's mother used to tell her about a relative whose husband used acid to hide a crime that he had committed. But because Linda didn't dissolve the way they expected, they took her to the woods in a place called the Acreage, and they dumped her in the woods there. And they later drove Isabel's car to the airport. They took $8,000 of Isabel's money she had been saving, and they went on a shopping spree. Linda used some of that money to pay a friend to pierce their navels, and they also got tattoos of each other's names on their chests. Isabel's car was found in an airport parking lot, so Linda and Antoine lied and said that Isabel had moved to Texas to live with her son because of her and Linda's last argument. They both thought that that would just be the end of it. Isabel's employer at Protect Leaded Eyewear in Palm Beach Garden called her home on June the 26th when she didn't show up for work, and Linda reported her missing the next day. Linda told police that a man had picked up her mother in a black vehicle and that he was a potential client in Isabel's side business, where she would prepare tax documents and immigration papers. She also said that although she and her mother did argue, they were very close. She said that her mother was a very beautiful person inside and out and was intelligent and hardworking. Linda said her mother was the best mom in the world. But on the 4th of July, land surveyors found Isabel's body 9 miles from her home. She was badly decomposed and an extension cord was found underneath her body. She was identified through dental records and by a co-worker that recognized the jewelry that she was wearing. Linda and Antoine were both charged with first-degree murder, and they faced the death penalty. Prosecutors cut a deal with Antoine, and he agreed to testify against Linda in exchange for a 20-year prison sentence on a second-degree murder charge. After the plea deal went through, Antoine told the police that they decided to kill Linda's mother so that they could be together. Linda was first given the option to plead guilty to second-degree murder, and she agreed to a 40-year prison sentence. and with good behavior, she could get out when she's 51. Her attorney said that Linda is remorseful and she regrets ever meeting Antoine Wright. Valerie Parashumti and Jessica Stasinowsky were called Australia's infamous lesbian killers. Jessica's parents divorced when she was young, and she had a history of harming herself, and she often felt isolated and emotionally barren. She ran away from home, she lived on the streets, she used drugs, and she worked as a prostitute. Valerie was physically abused by her father from the ages of 3 all the way to 16, and her father once went to prison for beating up his wife, and Valerie had to pull her father off of her mother. She also protected her brothers and her sisters from her father, and he was so violent that he once held a sharp gardening tool to her throat. Stacy Mitchell was 16, and she was originally from Britain when a mutual friend introduced her to Jessica, who was 19, and Valerie, who was 18. And Stacy had run away from home after a fight with her parents on December 7th, 2006, so she needed somewhere to stay. For $20 a week, she could rent a bedroom, so she arrived at their home on December the 14th, 2006, and I believe she stayed with friends up until that time. 27-year-old David Haynes also lived there with Jessica and Valerie. And just a few days later, on December the 18th, her new friends were plotting her death. And here's why, according to them. Stacy had a habit of walking around the house in her underwear, and Valerie and Jessica took it as flirting. This caused friction between the couple, and Jessica quickly began to hate Stacy. She thought Stacy was flirting with Valerie, so they both decided that she had to go. So Valerie had to prove that she wasn't attracted to Stacy by ending her life. That doesn't make any sense to me, but that was her logic. So Jessica gave Stacy what she said was ecstasy when it was really Rohypnol. So late one night, Valerie, Jessica, and Stacy were all sitting around the table and they were drinking whiskey when Stacy tried to get up and dance. Valerie told her to sit down, and then David heard someone yell, "Now." Then he heard a cry for help that was followed by a thud that he ignored. Valerie had walked up behind Stacy and started hitting her in the head with a concrete slab so hard that it broke. At one point, Stacy was able to get away briefly and crawled to David's bedroom door, and she tried to push it open, but he quickly closed it. So Valerie just kept hitting Stacy, and Jessica strangled her with a dog chain belt that she wore around her waist. David told Jessica that he needed to get out of the house because he was having a panic attack, so she gave him a t-shirt to put around his eyes, and she helped him find the front door. She walked him past Stacy, helped him get to the front door and out of the house. She gave him a cell phone and said that she would call once everything was over, and when it was okay for him to come back. After 20 minutes, Jessica checked Stacy's pulse. She was still alive. There was blood all over the kitchen floor and the walls. So Valerie took some sponges and a mop and she started to clean up. After 30 minutes, Jessica checked Stacy's pulse again. This time, Stacy was gone. Jessica and Valerie decided to make a video of the crime scene on their phone where they mocked Stacy's British accent. They also made out over Stacy's body. They were apparently turned on by what they had just done. David called around 1:40 to see if he could come back home, and Jessica told him that Stacy was dead, but they needed 2 more hours to clean up. Stacy suffered for 45 minutes before she succumbed to her horrific injury. But Jessica later told a prison officer that she wished that it had lasted longer. David returned home around 3 that morning. 4 days after the crime, the 3 of them went to purchase a chainsaw, some cement, and some shovels at a hardware store. Stacy was reported missing by her parents on December the 13th, so the police went to the home of Jessica and Valerie. Stacy had made up with her parents. She was planning on coming home, but she never made it. And this is when her parents filed the missing persons report. Police arrived to Jessica and Valerie's home just after midnight on December the 21st. Jessica, she took off running, but Valerie met with police and gave them a false name. So Valerie and David told police that Stacy had actually left the house. But police returned 3 hours later after they learned that Valerie gave them a fake name. And when they returned, David was there alone this time. He admitted that Stacy had been murdered by the two women, and he told police about the trash bin with Stacy's body upside down inside. After their arrest, the couple, they confessed, and a psychologist who assessed Valerie for the court found that she had a severe personality disorder, and she was obsessed with vampires, and she was aroused by torture and violence. She also had a history of drinking blood as part of a vampire subculture since the age of 10. First, she was just drinking her own blood, then it was the blood of others. While the girls were in court, they both showed a lack of remorse, and that caused the judge to comment that a year in prison while they awaited sentencing was necessary. The judge felt that it would give them time to reflect on the gravity of their crime. They didn't really seem to care. They just did not seem remorseful. They just continued to whisper and giggle at each other in court, and they would smile at each other as the horrifying accounts of what they did was heard. They had only known each other for about 2 months, but their relationship was very intense. They were obsessed with proving their commitment to one another, and the judge ordered that the couple not be allowed to contact each other while in prison, but they did not follow that order at all, not at first anyway. They were spending up to 90 minutes together on weekdays and 7 hours a day on weekends. But Valerie was eventually moved to a separate prison. Now, in a January 2007 letter, Jessica was describing the crime, and this is what she said. As soon as it started, I wasn't me. I have never felt that kind of lust for blood before. Something in me changed. The feel of her blood sprayed all over me, and it was almost a romantic, animalistic lust. I don't know when or how. All I know is something in me felt in place. Valerie and Jessica were both sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 24 years to be served. David Haynes received a 2-year sentence for being an accessory. In 2009, the girls kept in contact through serial killer Catherine Burney. She and her husband David killed 4 women in their home. In 2012, 3 prison officers were injured after trying to break up a fight between Valerie and another inmate. And in 2013, she attempted to escape from prison, but she failed.